Hello, everybody. We all know by now that the United States under President Trump has bombed Iran, and it's bombed 3 of their nuclear facilities. And that is very disturbing to myself and a lot of people, because I do not want the world to be escalating towards World War III. And this is difficult to say because I've supported President Trump almost unequivocally for the last 8 or 9 years, except when he rolled out these experimental injections. And of course, there's been a lot of injuries and deaths from those things. I oppose that. But I've supported him in putting America first. I'm obviously from the UK, but that's a good policy because hopefully it filters through to Europe as well, that we put our own nations first, that we control our borders, that we reduce illegal immigration and legal immigration as well, although he's not doing that. But we get rid of this ridiculous climate alarmism and get back to reliable, continuous, cheap carbon-based energy. And we stop this hideous wokery that is coming on all of our nations. There's transgenderism, the abortion to birth, euthanasia, which has gone through Parliament in the UK this week. In America, you had President Trump, and he was doing some good things domestically. But the foreign policy is clearly not America first. It's clearly Israel first. And it's been very disturbing and horrific to watch the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian men, women, and children over the last year and a half. And then on 6/12, as they say in the USA, or 12/6 in the UK, June the 12th, Israel started bombing Iran. And then on 6/20, as you'd say in America, 26 in the UK, that's June the 20th, summer solstice day, America, under President Trump's order, joins in and bombs 3 nuclear facility sites in Iran. So we all know this by now. I think these sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, nuclear enrichment sites. Uranium was being enriched there up to a civilian grade, not a weapons grade, but it was being enriched, and America bombed those sites, and with the aim and objective of putting them out of operation. And Trump has been saying over and over again, like a mantra, Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. Well, Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, but the country that in the Middle East that does have nuclear weapons is Israel. And they have them at their Dimona facility. And the whistleblower that told the world that Israel has nuclear weapons, Mordecai Vanunu, I think his name is, was put in prison for 22 years in solitary confinement. Now, Israel wouldn't have done that if he was just making it up. But clearly, he has exposed what the Israelis were doing, and they haven't ever signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, but they have just developed them. They have nuclear weapons, and they still pretend that they don't have them, but everybody knows that they do. So Israel has nuclear weapons. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, but America's bombed Iran. And this is dangerous, aggressive, belligerent escalation of tensions in the USA that is not making the world safer for Americans or Europeans or anybody, but it's actually taking us a huge step closer to World War III. And the only reason I think that we're not there yet is because Iran is not the boogeyman that everybody makes out. And it is quite disturbing that, again, we have intense propaganda from across the political and media spectrum across the world, all across the West, whether it's America, UK, EU, whether it's right and left, whether it's the BBC, the Labour Party, the Tory Party, Reform UK in the UK, in America, you've got Trump, to the news networks. There's Fox, supposedly right wing, but not, and MSNBC and CNN on the left, all saying, isn't this wonderful? America's bombed Iran. Now Iran's not going to have a nuclear weapon, but they didn't in the first place. A good person to listen to on this is Richard Medhurst, who's done a very good 15-minute synopsis of everything to do with the US-Iran nuclear deal, how it was made in 2015, how it was broken in 2017 by Trump. And then since then, over the last 8 years, Trump has been saying Iran must not have a nuclear weapon, but they've been negotiating, but the negotiations are fake. America was negotiating with them, and while they were, Israel started bombing Iran, and then they pulled out, and then Iran was negotiating with European countries for a week, and then the USA bombed Iran. And so now President Trump's statement, again, this is ridiculous. I don't want to say this because I've been a supporter of him for 9 years, but I can't support this. When he says, we bombed Iran, job done, great job, now it's time for peace. I mean, what do you think they're going to say? Oh, thank you very much, you've bombed us, now we're going to make peace. From their point of view, it's the same with the Russians. There were the Minsk agreements in place, and then Angela Merkel admitted the Minsk agreements were just there as a facade to help Ukraine to arm over 8 years, and then use that to go in and try to make regime change in Russia. The Russians saw that coming. They stopped it with a special military operation. But they're not going to trust anybody in the West at all, whether it's America, whether it's the UK, the EU, or Israel. Iran now, they're not going to trust anybody to negotiate because President Trump has said one thing, then he said another thing, then he's done another thing, then he said something else, and then he said we're going to have a deal, and then he's pulled out of a deal, and then he's blamed the Iranians for walking away from negotiations when they didn't, and then he's bombed them. And then he said, oh, now it's time for peace, everything's done. And now, within about a day, he's talking about regime change. It's ridiculous. And this is not the way to win hearts and minds. It's the only purpose this serves is to serve the plans that are already in place, the project for a new American century by the neocons, which is to have American control over the oil reserves in the Middle East and to stop any country in the Middle East from becoming essentially sovereign and gaining any sort of power of its own. And of course the Oded Yinon plan from Israel, which is the Greater Israel project, whereby the same thing will happen in the Middle East. All the other countries around will be divided and kept permanently fighting each other and and being kept weak and controlled and manipulated by Israel, who will be the supreme country in the Middle East. Both of these things are wicked. Every country needs to be able to develop and find its own way without being bashed down by somebody else. But this seems to be what Israel, and by extension the United States, not the American people. The American people largely don't want this. The American people want their government to be America first, which is what Trump promised in the election, America first. But quite clearly, he's turned into Israel first. And of course, there's huge amounts of apparatus within America, within the media, within the Pentagon, within the military industrial complex that puts Israel first, because there are so many US-Israeli joint citizens in positions of power in the deep state. But Trump himself has taken lots of money from the Israeli lobby, not least by, what's her name, Miriam Adelson, given him, I think, $100 million for his campaign. So, of course, he's tied to the Israeli lobby. and then we have, as a result of this bombing. Now, I didn't want to say too much yesterday because I was looking at this. It was very disturbing. I was still trying to work out what's going on here. But the best people to listen to find out what's going on, the experts in this really, are Colonel Douglas MacGregor and Professor Jeffrey Sachs. They are excellent on speaking about all of these issues to do with the Middle East and Ukraine as well, and what's really going on and what the scenario is and how it's likely to play out. Now, the thing is, there's been a number of people who have said, you know, just parroting President Trump, this is great. He's bombed Iran and now it's over. He's actually saving lives. This is going to bring the clashes, the war that's been started to an end. Well, you know, listen to Colonel Douglas MacGregor, listen to Jeffrey Sachs, and they would say this is completely not true. You think that you bomb somebody and that's the end of it, and then they're going to come back and say, oh, thank you very much for bombing us. Oh, you've saved our country. Now we're going to negotiate with you again after everything that they've been told has been, you know, swept aside by now the USA being a co-belligerent with Israel in military aggression against a sovereign nation. You know, I'm no fan of the Iranian regime, but this is not the way to go about things. It breaks every convention of international law. It breaks the US Constitution as well, because in the US Constitution, only Congress can declare war or decide to go to war. But President Trump has done it unilaterally without the approval of Congress, and but him and his people, Marco Rubio, etc., are saying, "Oh, it's not war. We've just bombed them, but we're not going to war. Okay, we've just sent a few bombs. That's it. It's not war." And someone else said, you know, in his administration, well, we're not going to war against Iran. We're going to war against Iran's nuclear weapons program. Well, you know, that's like the people, someone bombing the Pentagon and saying, oh, we're not going to war against America. We're just going to war against America's military. You know, if someone did that to America, they would not take that as, oh, thank you very much. We can make peace now and start. This is the starting point for negotiations. I mean, this is how ridiculous it is. Imagine that. Someone bombed the Pentagon and said, now this is about making peace. Would you think America would come to the table and start negotiating peace in a nice, friendly way if someone had done that? Of course they wouldn't. And to expect the Iranians to respond in that manner, I mean, it's just utterly ridiculous. So Colonel MacGregor, Professor Sachs, are saying this is not the end. This is the start of a very long, difficult, protracted war. It's not the end of it. This is, Iran will respond in one way or another. And it looks like one of the things they're going to do, maybe the only thing, but maybe one of a number of things, is they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz, which is a narrow channel where most of the world's oil that comes from the Persian Gulf is transported out through the Straits of Hormuz on large oil tankers. So that would be oil from Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Iran. You know, a very, very high percentage of the world's oil comes from the Persian Gulf. If Iran shuts that off, there's just going to be a dearth of oil, an oil famine in the world. Iran won't suffer because they'll still have oil. They won't be, you know, they will they'll let their own boats out, of course, but they won't let any other boats out. And taking oil to Europe or Africa or South America, you know, so other countries are going to suffer. That's one of the things that they may do. They may respond militarily, but it's clearly this is not the end of aggression, because Israel is continuing to lob bombs at Iran, at residential areas, at hospitals, at schools, at universities, at government buildings. And what Israel is trying to do, or what they say they want to do, is cripple Iranian society, so then the people will rise up and topple the Ayatollahs and put in their little puppet. Forgotten his name, but he's the grandson of the old Shah, who's talking about regime changes being wheeled out at the moment, to talk about how he's going to come in and be the Western puppet leader of Iran and change the name back to Persia. Well, you know, swings and roundabouts, isn't it? But regime change by destroying the infrastructure of a country never works out well. Look what happened when that's been done before, and it has been done before in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and Libya and Sudan and Somalia. All of those countries are basket cases now, with terrorists, governments like in Syria that are killing innocent people, including Christians, in the country. And they want the same thing for Iran, and Israel are promoting this as something that's going to be good. We care about the Iranian people, so we're bombing their schools and hospitals and police stations and government buildings. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is, you know, the twisted, what you call it, you know, propaganda. Twisted statements from a psychopath, a country which is psychopathic, which is Israel, which has got nothing to do with the Israel of the Bible. By the way, 1948 state of Israel is not the Israel of the Bible. I'm going to make another video about that later on. But, you know, this is just disastrous. And it is disturbing that a lot of people are falling for the propaganda, you know, repeating the mantra that's coming from Trump, from Netanyahu, from the BBC, you know, even to, you know, people in reform. It's supposedly the alternative government, alternative party. No, they're not government. They're not going to be the government. We are in the Heritage Party, but at the moment they're being pumped as the alternative, and they're just pushing the establishment line that this is a good thing. Israel first, bomb Iran. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, and a lot of people are just repeating the mantra, repeating the propaganda, which is there to manipulate you. Haven't you seen this? Haven't we seen this so many times before? When the entire mainstream media and everybody in the political class, from the centrist, the globalist, to the fake alternative right, now is saying the same thing, and they're promoting war. We've seen this with the lockdowns, haven't we? We've seen this with the injections. You know, if you don't lock down, then you're a COVIDiot, you're a granny killer. If you don't take an injection, then you're spreading a disease. If you don't support Ukraine, you're a Putin's puppet. Everyone at that time in 2022 was repeating the same line: Putin's illegal and unprovoked attack, not taking into account the whole context of 30 years of NATO expansion and direct aggression against the Russians living in eastern and southern Ukraine. And this time it's the same. Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. Everyone is required to affirm and repeat the mantra. And if you don't, then it's like, well, you don't care about us. You would let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Oh, so you're irresponsible and you wouldn't defend the West. That's the mantra, that's the propaganda, that's the manipulation and the nudging which is going on. Haven't we noticed and seen this so many times before, that when you see everyone on every media channel across the world suddenly starting to say the same thing all at the same time in order to promote and justify an action which is abhorrent, you know that this is wrong, it's pre-planned, and it's done in order to try to get everybody to shut up and be silent and fall in line and get behind the people who are doing the bad things which are making the world a more dangerous place, but enriching the people who are pushing these plans, who are promoting Israel in the Middle East, and the slaughter of Gazans, the slaughter of Palestinians, and the military-industrial complex who want continuous, perpetual war. And this, again, is going to continue that and not stop it. So I'm falling out of line, if you like, with Trump, the BBC, Farage, Starmer, Camille Badenoch, everyone else who is all now the establishment, the uniparty is now extended over to reform in the UK and to Trump in the USA. There's no difference between them anymore. And the dissidents in America, as voices are strong and their voices are being heard. The dissidents from MAGA, as it's become uniparty, who are Thomas Massey and Tucker Carlson, and he's not in politics, but in the media, obviously, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others who are true MAGA in America. And I am truly for the UK first in the UK with the Heritage Party. We stand against escalation of war and entangling our country in foreign conflicts and supporting belligerent actions which don't need to be taken. And the world would be a safer place if we had said to Israel, stop slaughtering Palestinians, and we had stood up against escalating war in Lebanon and Syria and now Iran, which is, again, it was all laid out in 2003 by General Wesley Clark in his famous statement talking about how the Pentagon had the plan for America to go to war with 7 countries in 5 years, beginning with Iraq and then ending off with Iran, with Lebanon, Syria, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan in the middle. Well, it hasn't taken 5 years. It's taken 22 years. And now they're starting war with Iran. And despite Trump coming out and saying, job done, now we can have peace. As I said before, within 24 hours, he's now talking about regime change. So this is not something that is going to bring peace. It's going to be something that is going to escalate, I fear, dangerously. But I pray that something will stop the escalation and no more stupidity will happen from Western nations. Maybe that's a vain hope, but just by saying this and being a dissident voice in the UK, maybe some of you will also speak up and come out from the propaganda, the exact same methods which are being used in order to get everybody to support bombing Iran, as were used in order to get people to support supplying weapons and money to Zelensky to kill Russians. I don't agree with that, which was the same methods used to get people to lock down and 55 million people in the UK to inject themselves or get injected with an experimental poison that is now killing and injuring lots of people. Don't trust anybody who wants to escalate war here on the basis of a lie, because they are not trustworthy. Thanks for listening, everybody. There's a lot there. I hope that in days to come, things will de-escalate, and I will continue to call for that, and for us in this country to concentrate on restoring our own nation rather than bombing other nations and getting involved in third-party conflicts around the world, which we have no business getting involved in. Thanks for listening. God bless you all.